Hey guys, it's Brian from Ep.6 Motorworks and welcome back to my shop. So hey, where we left off in the last video on my little Fiat project here is I had established this line. I did move, if you remember, I actually made a splash mold of the original light, moved it over to here and put some foam in, this little, some two-part foam. Basically you mix that up, it expands real quick and you get a nice body shape, you know, using basically any old body tools, you know, just some body tools like that, just kind of shape it down. So that allowed me to kind of establish and carry on the original body lines, making sure everything kind of flows. The opening though may have to go left or right slightly, that's why it's not finished. I won't know where this actually lives. If you remember, what I said is I want to make sure I get this height right before I actually, you know, establish where the body actually is ultimately going to go. It's really pretty close. It's probably within maybe a quarter to a half of where it really should be. But I won't know that 100% until I get the hoop in. I've kind of lined everything up the way I think it's going to go, but you know, there's some finesse involved, I guess. So to get that, what I needed to do was break out, now that I'm happy with this position here, I needed to break out my JD Square protractor for tubing. So what I did was stuck this right here in the B-pillar up to the ceiling, and it gave me the angle I needed. And that angle is, for this car, is going to be 78 degrees. So to save time and basically not to record everything, I did go ahead and bend up the tube, and the tube's over here. Ta-da! So here's the tube that goes for, again, this is going to be the B-pillar tube. I have no idea if this is actually going to fit. There's some tight tolerances in here. I needed this to really go right up against the existing B-pillar, if not into the B-pillar just a little bit, so we actually had enough room for the seats. The seats have a shoulder kind of guard there, so I need that as much space as possible. I've done as best job as I can of actually measuring it and bending it. These aren't really, it's more of an art than a science, I guess, if you will. So this is chromoly. It's a 83 wall, so basically the same stuff used for any kind of dragster or roll cage kind of setup. So what I need to do now, as you can see, is see if this actually works. So I got the gantry hooked up, I got the top hooked up. What I need to do is lift the body completely. As you can see, I started carving out this foam. It's still sitting on the tire. I need to basically clear enough space out, so if I need to move the body back and forth or maybe up and down just a little bit, I can do that. I don't want to move it up and down. Take that back. This needs to be 4 inches off the tire, so I have enough clearance. So in theory, I should be able to put this in the car and it should start basically supporting the car. This should rest right up against the existing body shell. So I guess we'll find out if that's going to happen. Hold on. knife would have been the way to go with that, but as you clearly saw, that was not a good option. Sawzall, ready to work. All right, so now let's see if this actually fits. We gotta lower the body back down. You saw me put the hoop in, kind of see it there. Have no idea what we're up to, but we'll see. So it is actually I have to get in here with a hammer and a little body hammer and dimple this inside. Actually, let me show you what I'm talking about. So it's a little hard to see, but so we got that gap there, which is about an inch, and I expected that because the body actually kind of bows out. I didn't want to run this roll bar through a ring roller to kind of push it out there. And we're kissing the top right there. So that part right there is where I got to take and tap it in slightly so the roll bar can actually, it's a little hard to tell, but it actually needs to go up about another inch. And that's because it's actually recessed into the actual frame itself. So it goes all the way to the bottom of the frame right there. So that's about 4 inches. And we just need to basically, tap that in right there so we can lift it all the way to the top. So let's get this body back off and hit that corner there and hit that corner there and see if we can get this thing to fit just a little bit better. So after some banging and some cutting, you actually probably can't see the roll bar. That's the roll bar right there. You can't even see it on the other side. So I got it exactly where I wanted it within the actual frame. It's sitting right behind the B-pillar. It's actually tight against what's left of the B-pillar. So there's only a skin. I actually ended up having to cut quite a bit of the inside off. I'll actually show you what I got going on. Hold on a second. So now you can actually see the first hoop. It's basically going to be where the firewall lives. And it is going through the actual frame rail in the corner there. That's drilled and kind of sunk down in there. The reason for that is I want to get this height perfect. Remember, I want 4 inches of clearance on my back tire, so I need to raise that bar up to give me my 4 inches under my tire. So the goal right now is to go ahead and I got some jacks right here, and I made a little, basically a little cradle that I can lift the hoop up so I can go ahead and get my 4 inches, and then I'm going to weld that in there and obviously in there, and the whole frame or whole body will be sitting at the proper height in the rear. Then we can start worrying about the front. That's 4 inches. Got to worry about the actual fender line there. So let's go ahead and get started and get the main hoop or the back hoop there in the right spot. So after a lot of back and forth and measuring and leveling and everything, I have the main hoop here now perfectly placed. I'm going to go ahead and weld this in. You can see here I got this welding rod. I actually put a little mark there where 4 inches is, so I know that that is somewhere. There's a hole. There we go. So we've got 4 inches of clearance from the top of the tire to the top of the arch. This is going to be carbon fiber, so it'll be pretty thin, so I'm not really worried about, a 1/16 being off or anything like that. And I also raised the front. So this 2x4 here is really just to make sure that the front fenders are going to be able to clear. So doing so, we do have a pretty good size rocker now. I'm going to have to figure out kind of how to kind of dress that up, make it look a little slimmer. I think it's going to kind of maybe like undercut or roll, obviously. Kind of have a ledge out here, kind of like Porsche-esque again, kind of mimicking our fenders here. So let me go ahead and get this welded in real quick and make sure it's perfectly level, and then we'll continue on. We got to actually make a front and a back, so this thing will actually sit every single time like this. And we got to adjust the doors still. They're still pretty wonky. So let's get to it. go-kart. Obviously we've got a cross here. You can't see it in camera, but this roof is crossed. There will be some additional bracing back here once I actually place the motor and figure out where I can actually have some downpipes coming in. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work just yet with the motor. I got to assemble the motor and the transmission, and there's I think a change in the transmission because I wanted paddle shifting and I got to make something work. I haven't quite figured that out yet. So anyway, the front also needs another bar going from side to side. Originally, I wanted to use cantilevered suspension. I don't think that's going to work, at least not in the front. There's just not going to be enough room. So I'll go ahead and start working on figuring out shocks for this. I'll probably just use some stock Corvette coilovers for right now. The spring rate will be completely wrong because this car is not going to weigh nearly what a Corvette does, especially in the front. So we'll have to kind of adjust those shocks later on. But now what I've got to do is go ahead and weld all the tops. I got to do that before I can actually take the body, stick it on, and weld the body to the actual chassis here. So that is the goal. It will be a unibody car. This is not going to be a frame, chassis and frame separate. They will be, I just said that wrong. They're going to be, it's going to be a chassis and body together, unibody. That's what it is. Okay, I'll get the words out eventually. Anyway, so what I've got to do is set the seat. There's a number of things I got to do really pretty soon before I get too much further in this build. And that's probably the next thing is seating position. So now that we kind of know where my headroom is, the firewall is going to live, I got to place the seat so I can feel really comfortable and then establish where the rack's going to go. Let me actually show you what I've been kind of toying with on that rack. Okay, so here's my lovely workbench. Oh, one thing I was going to share because somebody had asked, so how do I actually bend these things and get everything working? So I do have a JD Square tube bender. I actually attached this to my welding table. If you go back and you can kind of see my other videos. So it's on rollers, but then using the welding table as a base, I'm actually able to weld or bend those tubes up nicely. And to get the nice angles, I use this guy here. This is also from JD Square. It's a protractor that's specifically designed for the radius of the die. So that allows me to get really, really accurate. These things are literally pushed up against the, these bends are pushed up against the actual body itself. So, and the only way I was able to do that is to get really accurate measurements. And finally, also from JD Square, I've got this behemoth of a tube notcher. So if you want to actually build your own frame, your minimum you're going to need is a tube bender and a notcher. I would recommend getting the protractor, but it's not necessary. Anyway, so what I was saying is kind of next up, right, is we got to place the seats. So the seats, it wasn't obvious in the one video, they're really tight together, so there's not a lot of wiggle room in here. This is why we had to push this bar so basically right into the actual body itself, so we had enough space in the car. I need to now kind of mount up the steering. And of course, with the project, I think it is going to be called Pieces of 8 because there's going to be 8 different cars in here. So far we've got obviously the Fiat body, it's floating up overhead over there. We've got the Corvette C7 suspension. We've got the Alfa Romeo motor. I'm not going to talk about the transmission because it was going to be an Alfa, but I think that's going to probably change. So in the so heating and air conditioning, that is definitely going to be the Miata. I got to just kind of hopefully fit it in there. I say definitely, but nothing's definite with this project until I actually make sure it actually works. But the plan would be for Miata heating and air conditioning. The steering now, I've been giving this some thought because I got these parts laying around. Oh, brakes, if you're wondering, I got a Wilwood brake here. So the steering though is going to be a couple of different pieces. So this is actually a rack out of a Maserati. So that's going to give us a tilt and actually telescoping tilt wheel, which is pretty nice. Obviously this car never came with anything quite so sophisticated. And then that is going to get mounted to this guy here. This is actually a steering rack out of a Toyota Yaris, electronic steering rack. And yes, I will be able to control that better than the just going into limp mode. We're actually talking to Fuel Tech, and we believe we can actually control this with a true variable speed because obviously the Fuel Tech will be monitoring the wheel speeds and stuff of that nature. So we should be able to get that working correctly. And then finally, that has to actually connect to the actual Corvette rack. And that rack, if you haven't seen my other videos, That's been already converted to manual a long time ago, so it never had actually, was planning on using any hydraulic on that guy. That was always going to be an electronic rack. So that's really probably a good stopping point. So the next episode, we will be placing the seats and establishing the column where it needs to live, as well as probably the heating and air conditioning setup. We need to kind of get that all mocked up. So yeah, I think the goal is going to be, for a while, we'll just kind of focus in on the front. I've got to build the engine. I've got all the parts for the motor. I'm doing a rebuild on it. So I need to kind of focus really right now on getting the actual front all established, because it is going to be, honestly, that's going to be a lot more challenging. This all has to get sealed up. It'll be very, very simple to seal the back of the cabin. Obviously, it's flat plane right here, so this is just going to be completely enclosed, and this will be somewhat open. You know, we have side vents anyway, so this isn't, this black area right here doesn't really matter if I completely close that off, but this will obviously close off that. The floor is obviously really straightforward. It's just these little angles here and closing off the nose itself. So once I establish the heating and air setup, as well as the steering position, I should be able to start kind of figuring out how to close that up. My concern though, not concern, probably not going to have a front trunk. Originally I thought I was going to have a front trunk, but let me just show you real quick, because these things are big. So this right here is air conditioning. This is heating, as well as the distribution system. So we got the defroster and such. So you can see, just by putting this guy in here, something like that, and that goes something like that. Kind of hard to see exactly. Originally I thought we might have a little trunk area, but this looks like this stuff is going to live right here, so we will not have that trunk up front. Matter of fact, that hood might not even be functional when all is said and done, but we'll see. All right. So that is a great stopping point, I think, in this video. I have no idea how long it's going to be. I will have to edit this down, or actually have someone help me edit this down and get it to a reasonable amount. Yeah. Anyway, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and thanks for watching. And share if you like this kind of stuff. I'd love to get a little bit of attention, trying to build a little bit of a following, especially if you're in the Atlanta area. We will be taking this thing out to Caffeine and Octane. I'm not sure if we're going to do it before it's finished or not, but we'll definitely be in and around Atlanta, as well as a nice drive up Tail of the Dragon. I think this thing will be crazy on Tail of the Dragon. So until next time, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.